Good morning. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation today. It's year 9 of the war and day 278 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land. And I want to thank the representatives of all the mass media who tell the world the truth about this war. Our brief schedule for today is as follows. At 13:30, we will have Mykola Lukashuk join us online, the head of Dnipropetrovsk Regional Council. We'll talk about the situation in Dnipropetrovsk region. And at 14:30, we will have Yaroslav Yanushevich join us, the military governor of Kherson region. And we'll talk about the situation in the region. And right now, joining us online will be Oleksandr Starukh, the military governor of Zaporizhia region, and we'll talk about the situation in Zaporizhia. Mr. Oleksandr, good morning. Good morning. Glory to the heroes. Glory to Ukraine. We see that the occupier doesn't stop shelling the Zaporizhia region, and today is no exclusion. And as per the reports of the general staff, we had 18 reports about destruction of the residential buildings. Can you please share this information with us in detail? What's going on? We had 88 shellings in total, 33 bombardments over 17 communities. There were more than 400 shellings within the last week, and more than half of them accounted for residential areas. 18 new destructions were documented yesterday. Periodically, there are usually more documented, but they are usually documented a little bit later after the shellings. Fortunately, there were no casualties within the last days and no injured. That's within the last night, but unfortunately, yesterday there were 3 injured and 1 casualty, and within the last week, 3 of our compatriots died and 6 more injured. So the week was pretty tense in terms of terroristic actions and bombardments of the communities, and in terms of casualties among the civil population. Still, our guys hold the defense line and they inflict significant damage on the enemy logistics and concentration of personnel and material. Mr. Oleksandr, what's the situation with the critical infrastructure in the region? Well, the critical infrastructure, we have a number of stories, 3 stories. One story is the occupied territory, then one in the warfare area where the situation is critical with power supply, water supply, and gas supply, because the transportation lines are damaged or broken in a number of sectors, which incapacitates the supply of utilities to the population. And in occupied areas, the last week passed difficultly. Still, all the networks operate properly. However, there is a schedule of rolling shutdowns to enable other regions to have sufficient power and water supply. The power infrastructure is being reinforced and repaired. Mr. Oleksandr, talking about the situation in the occupied territories, what is going on there according to the reports from local population? Well, we have a number of different stories. I think all the country follows the story with Energodar, where the situation is pretty tense due to the constant shellings by the enemy. They bombard the infrastructure around the nuclear power plant, and they bombard the Ukrainian cities, getting themselves covered with the nuclear power plant, which provides the heat supply and power supply to all areas around it. However, on the rest of the territories, the minimal requirements, the needs of the population are pretty much covered. I mean, in Melitopol and Vasilivka communities, there are still problems with power infrastructure as they are being constantly destroyed by the enemy, and these towns experience blackouts just like the rest of Ukraine. What's the situation in Vasilivka? Do our people manage to leave the occupied territory, or is it complicated for the time being? Well, there are two stories. Vasilivka suffered a lot due to bombardments, and the most part of it is destroyed, and the major part of its inhabitants left the territory under control of Ukraine. The enemy established a block post, a checkpoint. The people make it to the territory under control of the Ukrainian government. Only 29 people were able to leave, but within the last week, it's 438 people, including 67 children, who were able to leave the territory. The enemy keeps letting people through, but in small numbers. What about the heat supply? Did we manage to launch the heat supply in the territory under Ukrainian control? Yes, we made it on time. All the works were done in a proper manner and in timely manner. There is centralized heat in the Zaporizhia and the adjacent areas. In Vilnyansk community, still it's difficult for our utility and heat supply technicians to maintain the networks due to constant bombardments, which results in disbalancing of the system. Still, not without issues, but the heat supply is reestablished and everything goes well in these terms. Dear colleagues, your questions, please. Olga Apanasenko, Ukrinform, good morning. Could you please tell us, with regard to the territories under Ukrainian control, I mean Zaporizhia and Vilnyansk community, is there any organized evacuation of the people due to the bombardments? And what are measures taken in this regard? Yes, I will give you the exact figures later, but it's around 700 to 800 people being evacuated on a daily basis to safer regions, to the safer parts of Ukraine and abroad as well. And the flow of the people does not decrease within a month. I will post the exact numbers on my Telegram channel a little bit later, but it's a big number of people, around 1,000 people every day. And maybe the last question regarding the resistance movement. Are there any results that can be already divulged? Well, you know, as a rule, it's usually the general staff who discloses everything, because when you start speaking ahead of them, you can put them in jeopardy. But what we can tell is that our forces inflicted strikes in Tokmak and in Melitopol communities, and against the enemy forces who were bombarding Vilnyansk community. There were reports on destruction of the S-300 launch teams, and there were strikes in the forward edge of the battle area, directly in the points of the concentration of enemy forces. And we understand if it was not for the resistance movement and no information, our armed forces would feel it more difficult to fulfill their duties. But yes, our guys keep destroying the enemy. Let's wait a little bit and we'll see our guys liberate Zaporizhia and Vilnyansk communities just in the very same way as they did with Kherson. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Oleksandr. Dear colleagues, I will remind you we had Oleksandr Starukh join us, the military governor of Zaporizhia region. Our next briefing